A very good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. I'm Tracy Shilshi and here are the headlines of this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi dedicates the Tuiriyal hydropower project in Mizoram to the nation. The 60-megawatt project makes Mizoram the third power surplus state in the northeast. Rahul Gandhi takes charge as the new Congress president, promises to make Congress a grand old young party, attacks BJP in the first speech as the party chief. Relief for debit card users. Centre waives off merchant discount rate on debit card transactions up to 2,000 rupees. Government to reimburse banks for a period of 2 years. And 3 years imprisonment for former Jharkhand Chief Minister Madhu Koda and former Coal Secretary H.C. Gupta in a coal scam case. Quantum pronounced by a special CBI court in Delhi. Top story this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Tuiriyal hydropower project in Aizawl today. While addressing the people, the Prime Minister called the 60-megawatt project a significant milestone in the history of Mizoram. Modi, who arrived in Aizawl early in the morning, also added that the northeast has immense potential and that the government is committed to doing everything for the region's overall progress. After this project, Mizoram has now become the third power surplus state in northeast India after Sikkim and Tripura. Later today, the Prime Minister will also be visiting Polban, Meghalaya, where he'll be addressing a rally in Shillong and announce the opening of a party office and unveil a plaque for the Shillong-Tura National Highway. Election for the 60-member Meghalaya Assembly is scheduled to be held early next year, but the dates haven't been announced just yet.
Tuiriyal hydropower project is the first major central project to be successfully commissioned in Mizoram. It is the first large hydropower project in the state. It will produce 251 million units of electrical energy every year and boost the socio-economic development of the state.
On to the other big story this Saturday. Rahul Gandhi has taken over as the 87th president of the Congress party. Rahul takes over from his mother Sonia Gandhi, who served as party president since 1998. Soon after taking over, he made it clear what his priorities as party president will be, asking his partymen to stand up against the BJP. He also said the BJP was trying to ignite fire and spread hatred, telling Congress workers to counter this by talking to the people. The new Congress president exhorted his partymen to become an instrument of dialogue with the people of the country.
Many of us are disillusioned today by the politics of our times. Because what we see before us is a politics devoid of kindness and truth. Politics belongs to the people. It is their greatest weapon in dismantling the structures that oppress, silence, and disempower them. But today, politics is not being used in the service of the people. It is being used to crush them, not to lift them up. We are now being compelled to imagine that businesses can be built without harmony, that only one man himself is the voice of reason, that expertise, experience and knowledge can be cast aside for personal glory, that it is acceptable for our foreign policy to lie in tatters so that one man can feel strong, and that everything is in fact subservient to the leader's personal image.
Rahul Gandhi's elevation was welcomed by Congress leaders, including former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and, of course, Sonia Gandhi.
Rahul ji has been trained for a long period. He has been looking after many of the activities of the Congress party for many years, and he brings to this office of the Congress President a new sense of dedication, a new sense of commitment, a new sense of looking after the leadership role with courage and humility.
अपने उसूलों पर खुद खरे नहीं उतरेंगे तो हम आम जनता, आम आदमी के हितों की रक्षा नहीं कर पाएंगे। यह एक नैतिक लड़ाई है। इसमें जीत हासिल करने के लिए हमें अपने आप को भी दुरुस्त करना पड़ेगा और किसी भी प्रकार के त्याग और बलिदान के लिए तैयार रहना पड़ेगा।
Our correspondent Panchanan Mishra has been tracking all those developments this morning. Joining us now from the Congress office. Panchanan, 19 years on, you've got a new Congress president. What's the kind of mood that you're seeing there?
Yeah, Tracy, the celebration mood was there in Congress headquarters, 24 Akbar Road. And since morning, the Congress workers from different states were here to celebrate Rahul's coronation. But Rahul elevated today officially as a Congress president, and the mood was really enjoyable. But the many important things were spoken by the different leaders, Manmohan Singh, Sonia Gandhi, and himself Rahul Gandhi. Sonia Gandhi said very important point, and also she was encouraging the party workers. That she said that when she took over as a party president in 1998, the Congress was only in 3 states. But after in 2004 election, the Congress came into the power, and it gained a lot. So there is no reason to get gloomy. There are ways ahead, and Congress will certainly grow under the leadership of Rahul Gandhi. She even praised Rahul Gandhi that Rahul Gandhi is taking well and conveying the message of Congress to common people. So it's really interesting to see Sonia Gandhi praising and also talking about Rahul Gandhi, and also Rahul Gandhi also said that this is a new Congress where there will be a promotion to not only youth but also respect to their old guards, old leaders. So the Rahul Gandhi was focusing on youth only because he understands that for the future of the Congress, to win elections, the youth must be focused, and he was just focusing on the youths. So he was telling the message that Congress cannot be eliminated. He was also attacked. He also attacked Prime Minister Narendra Modi without taking his name. That Congress cannot be erased and there cannot be Congress Mukt Bharat. He tries to enthusiast his party workers, and it has to be seen now that because there are many challenges lies ahead for the Rahul Gandhi next year. There will be elections in 8 states. And recently, how the Gujarat election goes, it will be clear on this 18th. Yes. So it has to be seen what challenges are there for Rahul Gandhi.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there for now, Panchanan, and thanks so much for joining us. But, you know, you've guided us towards what we would be speaking to. Of course, our guest, Vinod Sharma, political editor with the Hindustan Times, joining us in studio. Vinod, sir, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here. As being pointed out, a lot of challenges, of course, for Rahul Gandhi, being called, in fact, a crown of thorns, really, what he's taking on. We'll talk about the internal politics in a bit, at least of the Congress, but just looking at his speech and, you know, going ahead at the, you know, head on against the BJP, talking, of course, about, you know, the kind of politics that it's kind of adopting. Give us a sense, really, what is the challenge that's going to be for him when he takes on the Prime Minister? You know, do we see a different kind of a Rahul Gandhi? Do we see a different strategy that he will adopt?
Well, you see, he takes over at a time when the party is at its lowest. 44 seats in the Lok Sabha, the worst ever tally in the history of the Congress, which is over 130 years old. Of course, his speech was a mix. You know, he was aggressive to what he termed as regressive trends in Indian politics, and he attributed those trends to the BJP. But at the same time, in his speech, he was conciliatory towards the BJP. He said, "We disagree with you. But when I talk about brothers and sisters of the country, that also include the BJP." So I think that there was an element of reconciliation, element of politics of dialogue, and dialogue has to be also with the party in power. It goes without saying. And the trends which were there, he expressed his resolve that the Congress is resolute in fighting those trends, to establish dialogue between people, to to build structures in this country that empower people rather than disempower them or crush the voices, their voices of dissent or of reason. So I think that his speech was a mix of aggression and reconciliation and reason. But, you know, one swallow doesn't make a summer. This is just about one speech. We'll have to wait and watch as to how things pan out in the Congress party under his leadership and what attitude the Congress has vis-a-vis the BJP. There would be, of course, strong differences between the Congress and the BJP. Even in his election speeches in Gujarat,
yes,
he has been saying that I will not say a single word against the Prime Minister because he's the Prime Minister. Whether it's the present Prime Minister or the former Prime Minister, that he has respect for the institution of Prime Minister. And he says that we will fight our adversaries, but we'll fight them with love, a bit of a Gandhi-giri act, you know. So I think that it's interesting. His challenges are many.
Yes.
They're not easy to negotiate those challenges. It's not easy to negotiate those challenges. And here lies the test of the man and his leadership.
Absolutely. And his leadership of the party itself. It's interesting for him to say that, you know, this is not going to be a party that's going to focus on the youth, but also respect the veterans, because that's been one of the main criticism, really, you know, of the Congress party, you know, that they don't really, they don't give due importance to the experienced leaders.
You see, there's no substitute for experience in any field. And of course, the reliance of any young leader on fresh faces, youthful people is only obvious. You know?
Yes.
So he has said that this will be a grand old party of young people, which means that it would be change with continuity. It will have to be a change with continuity. You can't make a clean break from the past all too suddenly and yet think that you can forge ahead. So he'll have to rely on old advisors, old veterans of the Congress party who spent a lifetime in the Congress, and also the young forces which are going to join up and which are already there. So he has a team of advisors and leaders to assist him, and I think that he will depend on the veterans for guidance and for advice on questions where his own institutional memory might be shot.
All right. We'll have to leave it there, Mr. Vinod. Thanks so much for joining us, of course, and giving us your insight as to what is it that we'll be expecting from Rahul Gandhi and the challenges ahead for him. We'll keep track of all developments, of course, especially with the counting, especially coming up on the 18th of December. Meanwhile, in other national stories, former Jharkhand Chief Minister Madhu Koda and former Coal Secretary H.C. Gupta have been sentenced to 3 years imprisonment in a coal block allocation scam case. Pronouncing the verdict, this special CBI court also imposed a fine of 25 lakh rupees on Madhu Koda and 1 lakh rupees on H.C. Gupta. Former Jharkhand Chief Secretary A.K. Basu and Vijay Joshi, a close aide of Madhu Koda, have also been awarded a term of 3 years for indulging in corrupt practices. A quick break here on the Midday News. We'll be back with more in just a bit. Stay with us.
The story we thought we knew. The story of magnificence. The story of bloody battles. Of those who ruled and those who left their footprints. The story charting the course of our past. Talking history on Rajya Sabha TV.
Mihir Sen, an outstanding and extraordinary saltwater swimmer of India. He is the first Asian to swim the English Channel way back in 1958. And just 8 years later, in 1966, he swam the 7 seas of the 5 continents in 1 calendar year, which etched his name in the Guinness Book of World Records. In 1959, he was also conferred the Padma Shri, and in 1967 he was awarded the Padma Bhushan.
Art arisen from a multi-hued cultural canvas. Tradition and cultural fervour dating back centuries. And encircling them all, there's a magic that awes. Embrace your nation's brilliant human warmth. Watch Colours of India, Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Now, in an effort to boost digital payment, the Union Cabinet on Friday decided to waive the merchant discount rate applicable on all debit cards, Bheem UPI and transactions of up to 2,000 rupees. The government will reverse the same for the banks for a period of 2 years, starting 1st of January 2018. As a result of this approval, for all transactions less than 2,000 rupees in value, the consumer and the merchant will not suffer any additional burden in the form of MDR. MDR is the rate charged to a merchant by a bank for providing debit and credit card services when payment is made at a merchant point of sale.
To accelerate digital payments in the country, the MDR charges upon transactions worth 2,000 rupees, 2,000. MDR means merchant discount rate, shall now be reimbursed by the government to the merchants and the banks. आपको मैं बता दूं कि अभी तक क्या था कि आपको बैंक को डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन में MDR देना पड़ता है. उसका एक प्रिस्क्राइब रेट है जो समय समय से रिजर्व बैंक तय करता है. तो कई बार इसको लेकर दिक्कत आया करती थी कि लोग कैश की ओर अधिक झुका करते थे.
The Union Cabinet on Friday also cleared a bill that proposes to make instant triple talaq a criminal offence. The government is hoping to get Parliament clearance for it during the winter session itself. The draft of the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Bill was considered by the Union Cabinet. The bill attracts jail term of 3 years for the husband. Under the draft law, triple talaq in any form, spoken, in writing or by electronic means such as email, SMS or WhatsApp, would be illegal and void. Home Minister Rajnath Singh had led the group of ministers to draft the bill. In a landmark ruling in August, the Supreme Court had said that the practice of Muslim men uttering talaq 3 times for an instant divorce is unconstitutional. The proposed law will be applicable only on instant triple talaq or talaq-e-biddat and will give power to the victim to approach a magistrate seeking subsistence allowance for herself and minor children.
Many state governments have supported it. मैं आपसे इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि इस बिल के डिटेल स्ट्रेटजी के बारे में यहां मैं कुछ नहीं कह सकता, सिवाय इतना कहने के कि ये बिल देश की मुस्लिम समाज की महिलाओं के सम्मान और सुरक्षा के लिए है.
जब हम लोगों को परेशानी हो गई तब सुप्रीम कोर्ट में हम लोग गए और हमारे सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने हम लोगों को लाइट ऑफ कुरान फैसला दिया और ये निर्देश भी दिया कि सरकार इस पे कानून बनाए. तो अब सरकार ने इसको फॉलो किया है, मैं इसको धन्यवाद देती हूँ.
And reacting to the development, the Congress said that it would support the bill only if it was within the Supreme Court's verdict.
आप जो अगर बिल के रूप में जब बुलाएंगे तो उसको स्टैंडिंग कमेटी को भेजना पड़ेगा. स्टैंडिंग कमेटी में जाने के बाद उसके बाद विपक्ष तय करेगा कि उसमें देखेगा कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के निर्णय के हिसाब से प्रावधान है कि नहीं, संविधान के हिसाब से प्रावधान है कि नहीं, उस हिसाब से रणनीति तय की जाएगी.
Now, among the other decisions that the Cabinet approved are an amendment to the Negotiable Instruments Act that will allow a court to order of an interim compensation to those whose checks have bounced due to dishonouring parties. The amendment is likely to be introduced in the ongoing winter session of Parliament. Also, approval has been given for the continuation of the centrally sponsored scheme of National Ayush Mission, NAM, from April 2017 to March 2020. The NAM is being implemented by the central government to provide cost-effective Ayush services. Also, an approval of 2,600 crore rupees special package has been given for leather and footwear sector. The centre hopes to generate 3.24 lakh jobs in these 3 years through this. The Goods and Services Tax Council will meet later today to discuss early implementation of e-way bill as well as ways to plug tax evasion. Headed by Finance Minister Rahul Gandhi, the meeting will be held via video conferencing and deliberate on cementing gaps in the system as well as curbing evasion. This would be the 24th meeting of the council. The last meeting was held in Guwahati in November, where taxes on 178 items were slashed. In an earlier meeting, Arun Jaitley had earlier declared that e-way bill be introduced across India in a staggered manner from 1st of January 2018, and the document will be made compulsory by April 1st next year. India's exports rose at a fast clip in November, reversing the contraction in the previous month and allaying concerns that lingering issues with GST will dent shipments. Data released by the Commerce Department showed exports were up 30.6% in November from a year ago, while imports were up 19.6% in the month. Petroleum products, along with engineering goods, gems and jewellery, chemicals, drove nearly 80% of the rise in merchandise exports. The outbound shipments stood at $26.19 billion in November against $20.06 billion a year ago. Putting things in context, exports had declined by 24.43% in November 2016, the steepest that year. In November now, imports were also up by a 3-month high of 19.6% to touch $40.02 billion. This was attributed mostly to around 40% of the surge in oil imports. The 5-day World Telugu Conference was inaugurated by Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu in Hyderabad on Friday. Underlining the importance of the mother tongue, he said that children in schools should be taught in their respective mother tongues in order to make them aware of the importance of the language. The Vice President also lauded Telangana Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao for making Telugu compulsory up to class 12. Nearly 8,000 delegates and representatives have registered to attend the mega conference that will involve discussions and talks on Telugu literature and culture. Telangana and Andhra Pradesh Governor E.S.L. Narasimhan and Maharashtra Governor C. Vidyasagar Rao were the guests of honour. On 19th of December, President Ramnath Kovind would be the chief guest at the valedictory.
నేను వాళ్ళని ఏమంటున్నా అంటే నువ్వు మాతృభాష ఎలాంటిదయ్యా అర్థమయ్యేట్టుగా చెప్పాడు ఒక ఆయన వాళ్ళకి అర్థమయ్యేది చెప్పేదాన్ని మాతృభాష నీ కళ్ళ లాంటిది అమ్మ భాష కళ్ళ లాంటిది పరాయి భాష కళ్ళద్దాలు లాంటిది నీకు కళ్ళుంటే కళ్ళద్దాలు పనిచేస్తాయి నీ కళ్ళేరు ఎవరుకోండి నల్లద్దాలు పనిచేస్తాయి.
In some quick sports update, ace Indian shuttler PV Sindhu has defeated world number 2 Akane Yamaguchi of Japan in the Dubai Super Series finals. Sindhu defeated Yamaguchi 21-9, 21-13 in just 36 minutes to top the Group A in the women's singles. With this win, she stretched her winning streak to 3 matches in the tournament. Sindhu dominated the game from the very beginning as she took a 5-0 lead over her Japanese rival in the first set. However, the second set started on an equal footing. At one stage, the score was 9-8, but Sindhu kept her composure and stretched the lead to 13-8 before finally clinching the set 21-13. She will next face China's Chen Yufei in the semi-final later today. Our international news, and EU leaders have agreed to move Brexit talks onto the second phase, but call for further clarity from the UK about the future relationship it wants. The first issue to be discussed early next year will be the details of an expected 2-year transition period after the UK's exit in March 2019. Talks on trade and security cooperation are set to follow in March. British Prime Minister Theresa May hailed it as an important step on the road, but Germany's Angela Merkel said that it would get even tougher. European Council President Donald Tusk said that the 27 EU leaders were happy to move on to phase 2 after they met in Brussels. He congratulated Theresa May on reaching this stage and said that the EU would begin internal preparations for the next phase right now, as well as exploratory contracts with the UK to get more clarity on their vision. While securing a deal in time for the UK's exit in March 2019 was realistic, he also suggested that the next phase would be more challenging and demanding. EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said that he expects real negotiations on the second phase of Brexit talks to start in March next year.
As for the framework for future relations, it is now time for internal EU27 preparations and exploratory contacts with the UK to get more clarity on their vision. On that basis, we should adopt guidelines and start negotiations next year. I trust that the unity on the EU side will continue.
And back home and focusing on Parliament, the winter session, of course, began yesterday, and the government has clarified through a written reply in Rajya Sabha that there are past instances of rescheduling a session or holding it for a lesser period. The question was raised by Wansukh Sayam, the member of Rajya Sabha from Meghalaya.
The government has clarified through a written reply in the Rajya Sabha that there are past instances of rescheduling a session or holding it for a lesser period. In a written reply to a query raised by Wansukh Sayam, the member of Rajya Sabha from Meghalaya, Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs Vijay Goyal said this is not the first time that such a decision has been taken. Citing instances, he said, in the Rajya Sabha, the 98th session that was for 13 days had 9 sittings. The 156th session was for 16 days but had 10 sittings. The 172nd session, which was for 17 days, had 13 sittings. And the first part of the 230th session of the Upper House, which was for 14 days, had 10 sittings. The 18th session of the 5th Lok Sabha, which was for 12 days, had 11 actual sittings. The 6th session of the 9th Lok Sabha, which was for 16 days, had 10 actual sittings. The 12th session of the 10th Lok Sabha, which was for 17 days, had 13 sittings. And the first part of the 15th session of the 15th Lok Sabha, which was for 14 days, had 10 sittings. Wansukh Sayam had also questioned whether the curtailment had denied parliamentarians right to deliberate on issues and whether it adds to the backlog of issues awaiting legislations after due deliberations. The minister replied, it is the prerogative of the government to decide about priority of government legislative business to be transacted in parliament. He also said there is not backlog of issues as such awaiting legislation and there is no question of restriction on parliamentarians' right to deliberate on the issues in parliament. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
That's it on the Midday News. Thank you for joining us.